within you. Who do you believe? This is why Joshua says, I believe Joshua 24:15, choose you this day whom you will serve. As far as me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The Lord is the higher truth within yourself. If you're getting this, please raise your hand. It just helps me with the engagement. All right, beautiful. I can't see everybody at one time, but I have enough people on the screen to be able to see. How you see life determines what you will do. How you see life will determine what you will do. So Jesus is teaching us how to deal with our minds so we can get actions, we can have experiences or take actions and or have experiences that are consistent with the truth of our being. Sometimes we think we're on the right track. Let me put this in modern language. If you're in error and you think that you're on the right track, sooner or later, the train's going to crash. If you think that you are in truth and you're really in error, then you can only duplicate the experiences of that erroneous thought process. And not only will it create bad experiences based upon the scripture, it will create overwhelmingly bad experiences because you won't even recreate the situation because you think you're doing the right thing. Has anybody here ever stayed in anything too long? I'm not asking what it is. You're on mute, so I don't have to ask you. It can be a too long job. It can be a too long marriage. It can be a too long friendship. It can be a too long business venture. And because you thought you were doing the right thing, when, hear me, something intuitively was telling you, it's time to get out of this. It's time to do something different. It's time to make some new choices. But instead, we doubled down on it. And by doubling down on it, we created an even worse experience. Anybody knows what I mean by that? You created more pain, more frustration, more lack of something, and potentially life crashed on you. This is what Jesus is telling us. The lamp of the body is the eye. So once your perspective, once your perception, once your point of view, once your paradigm is off, and you think that it is right, and you still keep going, doing things that are out of alignment with your highest good, you make the crash worse because you just double down on it instead of making the decisions that are necessary to go forward and do something else. That's why he says, if the light inside of you is darkness, how great and terrible is that darkness? Just take a deep breath. I want you to be in good thought processes because this is something to absorb. Many times when people teach this scripture, they don't really drill down on what it really means. It just means, really simply, if you don't know your mentality is screwed up, you're going to take screwed up actions. And if you double down and stay in that screwed up mentality, you're really going to create problems in your life. And that's why Jesus is saying, get your mind right. Get your mind right. He's using language to help people understand. Now, I want to say one more thing about the scripture before I go on to my next points. You have to remember that Jesus didn't live in a time where they had lights coming through things like electricity. In Jesus's day, you either had the sunlight, the moonlight, or a lamp, something, or a torch, something that you had to light with oil and keep with you to light your home, to light a building, to see at night. So imagine walking at night or traveling at night and it's pitch black. Pitch black. Can you imagine driving your car and it's pitch black? They might not have been on cars. They might have been on horses and chariots and donkeys or whatever, or by feet, but it's pitch black. You can't see the holes. You can't see the obstacles. You can't see if anything's in the road. You can't see if anything is interfering with your travel. Same thing with life. If your perception, if your point of view, if your paradigm, if your consciousness is functioning in the light of spirit, in other words, you're awake and can see and have an understanding of who God is in you and who you are in God, that lights your path. So the things that might trip up somebody else who might not have as an enlightened consciousness as you might fall into problems, might walk into troubles that you would never walk into because your lamp is on and it's shining bright. There are times when people, because of where they are in consciousness, they just can't see what you see. Have you ever warned somebody not to do something and they did it anyway and it went horribly wrong for them? Raise your hand. Let me see your hand. Has anybody ever warned you not to do something, you did it anyway and it went horribly wrong? Raise your hand. What this looks like is simply this. There are times when you have your lamp on and it's shining bright, and then there's times when you don't have your lamp on and you're falling into the potholes of life. This is why in scripture the psalmist says that the Lord or God is a lamp unto my feet. Anybody familiar with that scripture? A lamp unto my feet. Why would you need a lamp unto your feet? Because where you walk, you want to be able to see. Where you go, you want to be able to see. The actions you take, you want to be able to see. At a deeper metaphysical level, the feet represent understanding that is connected to our physical existence, which means that I want to have the understanding to be able to go in a way that is navigated by spirit that will allow me to not fall prey to the obstacles and potholes of life. Does that make sense to you? Raise your hand. All right. Again, I want engagement. So thank you. I appreciate your engagement. Because normally, when I'm preaching in front of people, I like to feel the energy and make sure that people are with me. I want to make sure that, we have what we need to have. So I want you to write down some statements I'm going to make. These statements are not from me. I didn't create them. I got them actually from a book called The 3 Laws of Performance, which I think is a really good book. I just put my new thought spin on it. And the first law of performance is how people perform correlates to how situations occur to them. How people perform correlates to how situations occur to them. Now, depending on how a situation occurs to a person, in their minds, they're always doing the right thing, depending on how it occurs. This is why people who do horrendous things have ways to justify it. In the United States, we've just had a situation, a circumstance where in Georgia, 2 white men tracked a man down, shot him dead in the street. And when the district attorney got the information, wouldn't allow the police officers to arrest the man. Because in the context of racism, it occurred that they can justify shooting a man for jogging because he's suspected for doing something, for stealing something while he's jogging literally with nothing in his hands. That's how life occurs to them. So the actions end up being justified, not because they're right, but because in their minds, And in our minds, we find a way to justify the actions that we take based upon how life is occurring to us. So when it comes to peace of mind, that shows up a certain kind of way to you. How does that occur to you? Because how it occurs is how you will perform in that situation based upon individuals that are in your experiences, or how experiences impact you, how you perform. Is your peace dependent on what people say and do, what politicians say and do, what religious leaders say and do? We appreciate your respect, but we can't be the reason for your peace. What your children say or do, what your parents, siblings, friends, etc., husband, wife say or do. What is the lever that activates your peace? Is it within you, or do all these outer circumstances have to be right for you to have your peace? Just a question. How does money occur to you? Money occurs to different people in different ways. And I used to always joke that I come from parents who love to spend money. My dad can drive into Walmart and I'm going to pick up some shaving cream and walk out with $300 worth of stuff. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I'm coming home with a pool table. Just one of those things. My mom, who's deceased, loved to shop. Love. But sometimes that's also a part of not necessarily always growing up with what they wanted to have. My dad came from the projects in Chicago, etc. And so you sometimes can overcompensate. So you can look good, dress good, this, that, and other, but not save, not invest, not do other things, etc. Because that's how it occurs to you. Some people, money occurs to them that they can make a certain level in consciousness and not a dime more. Eric Butterworth lovingly tells a story, and these are 1960 numbers. I think the book came out in like 62 or 63, and Discover the Power Within You. He talks about how two men came to him for prayer for a job. They had both lost their jobs. One man had a $5,000 job, and another man had a $25,000 job. He gave the men the exact same advice and prayed the exact same prayer with them. And the man who had a $5,000 job went and got another $5,000 job. The man who had a $25,000 job got another $25,000 job. The jobs were connected to how they thought about themselves. The money is secondary to the consciousness. So when we overstep our level of consciousness, we tend to perform in a way that puts us back down to where we think we belong subconsciously and unconsciously. It could be relationships. How people perform correlates to how situations occur to them. How does your significant other occur to you? Does the relationship occur to you? How does your relationship with your friends and your family, your children, your parents, how does all of that occur to you? You have to realize that you perform a certain way based upon how you think the situation is happening and who you think you are in that experience. People are always doing things that they think are in alignment with the truth of who they are and the truth of the experience. Yeah, I got to be a jerk because in this situation, this is what's going on. No, you don't have to be a jerk. No, I'm not speaking up and telling my truth because of these situations and circumstances. No, that has nothing to do with the reason why you don't speak your truth. You only speak the truth based upon how it's occurring to you. In other words, who you are in the situation and what you think is actually happening. Instead of saying, I am an authentic spiritual being. I am a spiritual being living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual law. And what that means in a real practical way is this. Either I am present and authentic or I'm not. Now, authentic is not, keeping it real. Authentic from our perspective as New Thought Christians is being in alignment with the truth of God in us and how that uniqueness shows up. Like, I couldn't have sang the song earlier. I can literally do the action called singing. You wouldn't want to hear it though. because that's not my gift. That's not my uniqueness. My uniqueness shows up as the teacher and the preacher, among many things. Your uniqueness might show up in other different things. If somebody asks me to put this Zoom thing together and coordinate everything, that's not my uniqueness. You showing up authentically and uniquely the way God has designed you, not as a personality thing, because sometimes we get caught up into that. You know, I'm sassy, I'm contemplative, I'm whatever. I'm not talking about that type of perspective. I'm talking about the authentic gifts, talents, and abilities that God has already placed within you. And it'll shine through your personality. It'll shine through your life. Now, second law of performance. All right, are we ready? See, I give people work to do when they listen to me preach. The second law of performance is how a situation arises in language. How a situation rises in language. In other words, there's a whole dialogue that's going on in our minds about a situation. And we have language. We have language that many times is based upon the past. In other words, we're not being present to what's happening because we've already conditioned ourselves from the past. So, how many people here drive automobiles? Raise your hand if you drive an automobile. Okay. So, if you were driving on the highway, or whatever the major highway is in Toronto or whatever city you're watching this from, can you imagine driving your car or truck or whatever bus or whatever you drive, and you only looked in the rearview mirror? What would happen? You would crash. But that's what we do with life. We drag our past into our present and we put it into our future. And we find ourselves driving into a default future that is based upon our past. I really want you to get it. If you were driving a car and you were only looking in the rearview mirror, I don't care how skilled you are in driving a car, you will crash the car. Life doesn't care how smart you are. Life doesn't care how experienced you are. Life doesn't care how many letters you have before or after your name. Life does not care how much money you have in the bank. If you're doing and taking the wrong actions, if you're thinking and feeling out of alignment with the right way of doing things based upon principle, you will get results you don't desire. Period. Everybody on this Zoom has met a well-educated fool. It has nothing to do with necessarily intelligence. It's based upon perspective, paradigm, point of view, and the conversation that is happening within you that's determining how you see things. So you just don't see things just because you see them. You see them based upon the conversation that's going on in your own head. If this is making sense, please raise your hand. All right. So it's important for you to recognize that if the conversation is going on in your head is based upon what has been, what you've done, the mistakes, the problems, etc., you're not present to one, the presence and power of God right now, because God is I am, not I was. The other thing is you are now recycling the past and creating the future to look like your past. This is why you have to get present. This is why you have to get present. And you have to change your language, first in your mind and then out of your mouth. You have to change your language and start using language that empowers you and helps you create what you desire. And I really want you to get that you have to start watching what you think about a thing when stuff pops up. You get the bills in the mail, and then you don't want to open them because you don't even want to look at them. That's language that's going on in your head. When people are doing things that you may or may not agree with, be careful about your language. You can disagree with a thing without necessarily getting in the depths of the nonsense with them. Be mindful of what comes up, what type of language shows up, even in something as simple as a compliment. I often use this example when you say, oh, you look nice with that new outfit on. Oh, this old thing, instead of being able to even accept a compliment. Because something in your language that's going on in your head says, well, I can't accept this compliment. I can't let somebody just praise me for looking nice. I remember in a class years ago in the Johnny Coleman Institute, I used the example of a person saying they wanted millions of dollars. I'm God's millionaire and all that stuff. And I asked the person, if I took you to lunch, would you allow me to pay for it? And it's important that you recognize that if you can't accept lunch, it's hard to accept millions. Some people won't let you help them. Some people won't let you help them. I really want you to get it. So let me get back to my last point. The third law of performance is future-based language transforms how situations occur to people. Future-based language transforms how situations occur to people. Now, what this means is this: you speak now in the present what you want to see in the future. So if you want to be healthy, you don't say, I want to be healthy. You say, I am health. If you want prosperity, you don't say, I want prosperity. You say, I am prosperity. If you want peace, you don't say, I want peace. You say, I am peace. Because that's future-based language. Now you're going from language that's dictated by the past to being creative with your language. So you're now creating something new instead of recycling the past. If that makes sense, raise your hand. All right. So how you use your language will determine how you are creating new experiences and how those experiences are occurring to you. So creating future-based language, in other words, now it's a different conversation going on in your head and a different conversation coming out of your mouth. So when you study New Thought, for instance, in the book Lessons in Truth, there are the 4 main denials and 4 main affirmations. Dust off your Lessons in Truth if you have the book. Look at those 4 main denials and 4 main affirmations. Give you some homework. For the next 40 days, every morning and every evening, audibly affirm them. Audibly affirm them in the mirror. For the next 40 days, it's a chapter I believe it's chapters 4 and 5 in Lessons in Truth. The chapter on denial has 4 basic denials. The chapter on affirmations has 4 basic affirmations. These are general, wide, sweeping affirmations. You can add any affirmations or denials you want, but for the next 40 days. Why 40? 40 is the date in the Bible of indefinite but complete period of time. 40 days. Jesus was in the wilderness 40 days. Moses was in the children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years. Noah was on the ark 40 days. It's not literal, but we can use it as a literal metaphor for transformation. So what that looks like is simply this: start to create the language that you need to produce the results you want. So when somebody presents something to you that's out of alignment with truth, your language shifts. This is one tool only that you can use. One other example I want to give you is I don't know if they're set up to do it because so many things are shut down because of the global pandemic. But there's a book called The Complaint-Free World. I believe that's the name of it, by Will Bowen. And basically, it's a challenge to go 21 days without a complaint coming out of your mouth. You order the wristband, and every time you complain or do, it's a couple of things you can't do. You can think it, but you can't say it. But just the discipline of not saying it will eventually shift your thinking. So I would suggest go complaintfreeworld.com or whatever it is, Will Bowen, whatever it is. You can Google it, find the book, order the wristband, and as a community, start working with the concept. And then you can let your leadership know, how is it going with you? So I'm looking at my phone and my iPad time, and it looks like I'm out of time. So let me just say this. Get your I sound. Get your I single. Get your point of view, your paradigm, your context in alignment with truth, and live from the context of being a spiritual being, living in a spiritual universe, governed by spiritual law. God bless you.